hold on tight and get ready for this roller coaster of a tipping technique that is guaranteed to amaze you at every sharp turn. Now, in this project, I'm going to demonstrate a new feature found in Photoshop CS2 called Image Warp. However, in this project, I'm going to show you how to warp text. Now, let's start from the beginning and discuss just what image warp can do to an image. I've targeted my roller coaster image as you see here in my layers palette. I'm now moving over to the edit menu and down to transform and over to warp. As you can see here, a grid appears over my image. I simply and easily click within the image, drag, and it warps the image. Amazing. But check this out. Go up to the options bar and click on the word custom to reveal these default settings that you can then warp this image with. Keep in mind, you can also warp the text we're going to work on with these same defaults. Now notice this. If I move over here to the right and click on a point near the edge of my image and drag that, I can now select this control arm and adjust this control arm in a very similar way as I would in Adobe Illustrator. In this project, however, I'm going to be warping text. Let's go back here and undo that, and let's turn on a text layer and discuss some of the ways that you can warp text. Now, we all know that if we select the text tool, we can move up to the options bar and select this icon, create warped text. Now, in this technique, you had some default settings you could select here. For example, this one, the arc lower. Then adjust the arc here. But we didn't have those same easy controls as we did when we were warping an image. I want to get right into that text and warp this text. You can't do it here. So you click OK, and you think, well, let's move to the Edit menu, down to Transform, and over to Warp. Of course, I should be able to warp it now. I click on this, and I can warp this, but I cannot get inside the image and warp it the same way I did with an image. I can't do it yet. But there must be a way. Why, there is a way. Let's go back here and return this to my normal text here. And then we need to move up to the Layer menu here, down to Type, and over to Convert to Shape. That's right. If you convert text to a shape, you can then control it in the same way as you would an image. So I'm going to convert to shape. However, beware. By converting this to shape, I can no longer edit it as a line of text. But that's okay. Let's move forward and select Convert to Shape. Okay, my text has now been converted into a shapes layer. I can now warp it just like I warp an image. I'm going to move up here to my Edit menu and first start this project out by going down to Free Transform Path. Now I can go in, select this base control point here from our free transformation and drag this straight down just like this. Now, I'd like to bring in some guides to help me control this when I start to warp this text. I'm going to decrease the size of this image a bit, just like this, and bring up my rulers. I'm going to select the Command key and the R key on the Macintosh, or the Control key and the letter R key from the keyboard on the PC to bring up my rulers. Then I'm going to move my cursor into the ruler area here, click and drag out from the rulers a guide, just like that. It's a great way to bring these out quickly and easily. I'm bringing one here on the left, one on the right, and then finally I'm going to bring one here to the top. Then let's hide those rulers again with the Command R key on the Macintosh or Control R key on the PC and bring this back up to full size. I can now move over here to the Edit menu and down to Transform and Warp. However, I could also select this same capability from the options bar here. This quick and easy icon to switch between free transform and the warp modes. By clicking on this now, you can now see the controls appear within this image, this grid across the image of this text. And we just go to one of these control points and start to drag and distort our text. Now notice, I'm moving this down along the guide, but it does not snap to the guide. I'm merely using these as a visual guide. I put this into position like that. I go to the other side and drag that one down over here, just like that. I can go in here and select these control arms, as I would with an image, and move this up like this. And I'm going to continue through and start to adjust this text just the way I want it. Remember, I can click on the control points, or I can select directly right within this area of the text. In this case, I want to change the way the text is being distorted here near the edges. So I'm going to drag this text down here and drag this down here. That's one of the great capabilities I like about the warp tool with text. You can remove some of the more unusual distortions that can happen to text, especially when doing extreme distortions like this one. I'm going to bring this back down here a bit. Now notice this text is starting to overlap. I'm going to bring this back up into the image area because you can actually warp this text back around itself. So that's looking much better. Finally, I want to get the top of these characters to align with the top of my grid line. So I'm going to click over here on the right and then over here on the left to stretch that back up there again. That's looking pretty good. I'm looking at some of the distortions here. This O needs a little bit of adjustment. That looks great. Now, keep in mind, the controls of this text on the first round of warping are much easier because it's defined by the bounding box of this existing text, as you'll notice. I'm now going to hit the Enter key and show you something interesting. I have now resolved this distortion down into my image, but I'd like to make some adjustments, a few more. If I want to do that, I can go back to the Edit menu and down to Transform and Warp again, so I can make some adjustments. But notice that the bounding box goes around the entire area of the image. It's no longer confined to just the text path itself. So it's a minor adjustment here. You can still make adjustments to this, but it's not quite as defined as it was before. That looks great. I'm going to hit my Enter key and move forward. My next project was to blend this text into the background. As you recall, in an earlier portion of this movie, the final results looks like this. How did I do this? I did this with a layer style. I'm going to turn that off, go back to our original text layers here. To bring in a layer style, I'm going to target this layer, and I like to use this technique of double-clicking in this blue blank space next to this text layer, right in here. I double-click, which then brings up my layer style dialog. Within this dialog, I'm going to apply a gradient overlay. Clicking on the word gradient overlay, the default appears. The default is very close to what I was looking for. However, I'm going to do a little bit of adjustment here to the scale, like this. And then I'm going to click OK. Now, that's a first start to this process, but my text was blending in to the image area. Now, let me deselect away from the text so I do not see these outlines. I'm going to click on this roller coaster layer so we can see this here. Now, I want to get this text to blend into my background. The first thing I tried to do was, of course, to target this layer again, then go up to my mode adjustments and apply a mode like hard light. But watch what happens. Absolutely nothing happens. Now, why did that happen? There are circumstances where you cannot apply a mode adjustment to a very complex layer like this is. So you have to turn this off, turn this back to normal. the solution to this problem of not being able to apply a special mode adjustment is to place all of the layers into a group. I'm going down here to the base of my layers palette, and I'm selecting Create New Group, just like that. Then I'm going to target this text layer we created earlier, click and hold on it, and drag it into that group. Did you see that? It's now inside the group. I'll prove it by toggling this arrow, closed and open. So with this closed and targeting this, I then move up here where it says pass through. It's passing all the information through to the layers below. But it is now that we move down to hard light, just like this. And now it will blend everything inside that group using hard light. You've seen it here for the first time, yes, how to solve that problem when blending modes don't work correctly. Put things into a group. We now interrupt this program for a special news bulletin. It seems that Mr. Brown may have been in error. Yes, Mr. Brown said that placing these objects inside of a group, then applying the hard light mode adjustment, was the only way to solve this blending problem. Well, he was in error. As you see here now, I have displayed the layer style dialog that we saw earlier. As you recall, we applied a gradient overlay to the image earlier. However, Mr. Brown neglected to tell you that you could select here, Blend Interior Effects as Group. Yes, by selecting this, then selecting the blend mode of hard light here, this combination will actually deliver the same results as placing the objects inside of a group and then applying the hard light to that group. Mr. Brown, of course, has corrected this by letting you know this important information. Now we return you to your regular broadcast. So there you have it. We've finished our final project. We have learned how to distort text with the warp image capabilities. Give this a try the next time you're on a roller coaster of exciting imagery.